Our guest today is the owner of Goodness Gracious Cafe. I introduce to you Greg Corns. One of the many things you and I have in common is being surrounded by strong women and how that has shaped your life.
My generation back then, it was not that common to come from a broken household. My mum was always trying to pull me in. It's hard to own and operate a business, yet have a hand in the family. We had a up and coming influencer at the time, and he was writing some pretty harsh takes. I wanted to stand up for my team, stand up for my brand. I don't really accept this behavior.
Would you say that you've learned more in the 15 years of working for someone else, learning off someone else, or would you say in the 10 years of doing your own thing?
That's a difficult question. It's a very good question.
Kia ora te whānau, welcome back to another episode of The Martin Show. Our guest today is from the hospitality space. This man is an entrepreneur. He is the owner of Goodness Gracious Cafe. I introduce to you, Greg Corns.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, brother.
Yeah, nice.
Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. Bro, you have, even just I've only just seen through socials, but you have an incredible story.
Thank you.
That I'm looking forward to diving in.
Yeah.
I was just saying to you just then about, it's crazy about all of, I guess, the last maybe 5 or 6 guests that I've had the privilege of having a conversation with have been in that 40 plus category.
Yeah.
And so I've just been soaking up so much knowledge, wisdom, and
just the wisdom that we bring out.
That's it. But I am looking forward to diving into your story.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate you reaching out for it,
No, absolutely. Yeah. So let's start with the who. Who is Greg? What do we need to know about you, brother, to know a little bit more about who you are?
Currently 43-year-old, married, father of 2. 2 girls, so 15 and 11. Born and raised in Auckland, grew up in Mount Albert. Gladstone Primary, Pasadena Intermediate, Mount Albert Grammar School. So that's probably pretty fundamental in my life in Auckland growing up. And now just the owner operator of 3 cafes under the brand Goodness Gracious. Yeah, that's probably the quick synopsis.
Yeah. Well, take us back to, I guess, the Pasadena Mount Albert stage, right back. How would you describe your earlier years?
I mean, overall good. Had a lot of love in the household by the parents, but also kind of, I guess, a little bit traumatic in the sense that my parents split very early on in their relationship. If you constitute around, my mum moved out of home probably when I was 11 or 12, but the writing was on the wall fairly early on.
Yeah.
A lot of arguing with the parents and things like that. So, so I think that kind of shaped a lot of my life growing up. But, it's funny when you look back on things and you kind of realize the strengths that you gain from that kind of stuff. So, back in my generation back then, it was not that common to come from a broken household. And so, amongst neighborhood friends or the school network and stuff like that, I kind of felt that I was a bit ostracized from that kind of background. All of those are kind of learnings. I think that now that I'm older, and especially in the new world of social media and things like that, being comfortable with uncomfortable is something that, when I look back at my kind of life journey, those things that happen as you're growing up have probably given me a lot of strength in that uncomfortable space. So that's probably quite a big formative part. I mean, schooling and stuff like that. I had a great time at school. Mount Albert Grammar, when I went there, was huge Polynesian base. Quite a rough school in terms of its reputation back then. All boys, so it was before it went co-ed.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so quite a different school, but I had a great time, and I was kind of a good student, but at the same time, I missed a bit of school, kind of played up a little bit, probably because of the parental situation.
Yeah.
And, I think that probably contributed to the, the ostracization, I guess you'd say, in terms of, people going, oh, that Greg is playing up, he's a bit of a drop kick, So, especially when I got to the end of school, I repeated my last year of high school.
Yeah.
But these were all like kind of calculated decisions that I guess
right.
like other people never had context on, but like on paper, like a kid wagging school, repeating the last year of seventh form and things like that, it just doesn't look good. But for me, I was having such a good time at school. I hadn't gained university qualification at that time in my first year. I'd gained some papers, but I basically had 2 out of 5, but you needed about 3 or 4 out of 5 passes to get into any university courses.
Yeah.
And so didn't really have uni as an option. I didn't want to work. Sport was always a big part of schooling. I really enjoyed sport and seemed to play at a reasonably good level for the ones that I tried my hand at. So I was just interested in playing more sport and having a crack at that and not having to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I knew that I only needed kind of 2 or 3 more good passes. At that point, you could combine the 2 years, which I find kind of odd, but I'll take it. Yeah, and then that would give me a few more options coming out of school, which I subsequently went to AUT to study business, which I dropped out of that. Yeah. So yeah, and they were all like calculated decisions. End of schooling is the start of university is when I fell into hospitality. And it was very early on in that I realized that I had a love for it.
Yeah.
I was learning a lot from the restaurant that I initially started in, which was called GPK, which was on Dominion Road. And that was like a restaurant bar, really, really good level. All the staff and management, everyone there were like super engaged and really into delivering a great product. So that really rubbed off on me. And it was kind of from that I was getting more practical exposure to business. And I just felt like I was learning more working day in and day out. And
hands-on.
Yeah. So that's so I dropped out of university because I just saw that I was getting more from what I wanted to know about business, just being involved in it.
We're in a doing world though.
Yeah. And I'm like, what I've realized over this time is I'm a really practical learner. So, and I think that's when you look back at school and stuff like that and you realize it's not like a structure that works for everyone. And, it's funny, I guess, like in the modern world with like the democratization of information and stuff like that, there's so many more examples now of people that schooling was never like a major thing for them. But, when it was like my generation coming up, that was kind of all that was presented to you was like, you've got to go to school, get bursary, go to university, get a good job. And so, when like culture and society is kind of like, that's their view and you're in that, and my kind of journey on paper looks kind of terrible, but now it's kind of like an accepted like norm, like even with my kids with school, like I want them to go and try, I think trying is important. But I'm not that concerned what their end results is. Sure. It's more about like what they become as people, and so, so I guess, and so my background has kind of helped shape the way that I'm trying to parent. But I think it's also something that in the modern world, it kind of works more.
Wow. Speaking of your 2 daughters,
yes,
you seem like you guys have an incredible bond. And this is just through your social. You seem more like a teacher, you bring them into the shop.
Yeah.
You take them out on the water and go surfing and all that sort of stuff with them. You seem like a teacher is the word that comes to my mind. My question is, did you have someone like that, a teacher, a mentor, a role model?
My mum was a really big part.
Wow.
And I'm fortunate, like, I guess through all my sports teams and things like that, like I had good coaches and people that were always of that kind of mentor type ilk. But my mum was probably the most pivotal. My dad, like, whilst he had a lot of love, he worked a lot, like that. So that was his idea of like kind of providing for our family, which, so we lived a good upbringing with his work. He was an engineer in New Zealand and stuff like that. So, but, I guess like that, I learned by osmosis with him that like I could see how that hard work works, and both my parents were like that. My mum was like very industrious. So I kind of had these things to look at that did have a positive influence, outside of their own marital relationship, So like, so that was good. So, my mum, pivotal part, and then sports coaches and things like that coming up, a few good teachers, teachers that could kind of see that I was playing up a little bit. But again, probably were a bit ahead of their time that were more about what are you going to be as a person, and I think like Mags back then was really good for that.
One of the many things you and I have in common is being surrounded by strong women.
Yes.
For a lot of our lives.
Yeah.
And I want to know what that impact and how that has shaped your life.
Yeah, I think my mum was always trying to pull me in, from being a little shit, basically. Yeah. And, and I think when you look back on it now, you're like probably even more appreciative of it, than probably what you were at the time, and that was huge. So she was always trying to educate me about money and about work, and about being a good person, basically, and kind of what you put out is what you get back. And then later in life, so she's passed away. She passed away in 2017. And it's good. There was a journey in itself. She had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, so she had cancer it was basically about a 5 or 6 year kind of journey for our family. So even in that time, she was still trying to teach us with her actions, and I learned a lot about kind of prioritizing time for yourself to be a better person. Which is kind of a contradictory thing, I think, for people. How can you be selfish with your own time to be a better person? And so I really saw that in her last kind of 6 years, what that meant. And that was kind of a pivotal time with me in the business. I was growing from 1 shop to 2 shops. I was working ridiculously. I probably lost sight a little bit of like the family ideals that I wanted. And then that was a shocking reminder to kind of be like, hey, like, what do you actually want? What kind of person do you want to be? So, like there's things that have kind of, have been serendipitous with my journey, I guess, that have like really kind of helped me grow as a person, which I think has benefited my business, and family.
I do want to ask you about your drive and those sorts of things, because one of your values is hard work ethic. You've actually said work ethic has been the backbone of your journey.
Yes.
One of the quotes that stood out for me, though, was, and you've said, I had belief no one else could see. I was armed with perseverance, grit, and a real chip on my shoulder. Or I had belief that no one else could see. I love that. I think that's very relatable, particularly in the earlier stages.
Yeah.
My question is, where do you think that belief, that chip on the shoulder, where do you think that comes from?
I think it's all from that upbringing, So, it's like kind of, I knew on paper from an outside perspective that my kind of journey wasn't looking the best. Like you wouldn't amount to anything, So I've always kind of like accepted why people see that, but I kind of knew internally that wasn't going to be that way, and so so I've always had this thing to try and kind of not try and prove them wrong. I just knew that proving it to myself would kind of show, I've always got this thing that like things will play out in time, you know? And so like another favorite kind of saying of mine is patience is a quiet strength, you know? And so it's like you just have to like focus and do your thing and sometimes like just kind of put the noise away. And, you know, you can prove people out with time. So I kind of always knew that I'd do something, even if it was just like a solid 9 to 5 job, you know, like I felt at a time that was probably more than what people expected of me.
So you always knew that you were destined to do something.
Just do something, you know. I knew also, I think because of my background, like I wanted to be a young dad, you know, like I kind of, I kind of had this thesis that, you know, if I had kids young, then I would be able to play with them and enjoy that relationship. And I think that's kind of borne out. You know, my eldest is the surfer and my youngest likes to dance, but just being active with them, you know, it's hugely rewarding. And I wanted an emotionally strong relationship with them. And I think that was something that was probably missing a little bit, in my upbringing. So, so that's where, that's what I wanted. And I think that's kind of shaped. So I've had these kind of two things. I wanted to do something in business because I had a passion for that. And I also wanted to be a young dad. And again, they're kind of like contradictory things because it is, it's hard to like own and operate a business yet have a hand in the family. And I can see where like our family kind of broke down with that stuff. And, you know, up until the democratization of information, a lot of examples that I had of very successful business people, their personal lives had kind of turned to custard. And so like, you know, when you've kind of got this thing of like, why does it have to be that way, you know? And there's a restaurateur that I follow, Danny Meyer, who had a load of great restaurants in the States, especially around New York. He also started Shake Shack, which a lot of people are familiar with. So I read a great book of his, and it was about like, you know, his approach to business and like, you know, always challenging that question, why? You know, like things are done this way, but why? You know, does it have to be that way? So I kind of like looked at that and applied that to my life of both these things, family life and business life, and was like, why do you have to be successful at business and have a personal life that's custard?
Absolutely.
Like, why does it have to be that way?
Or vice versa, right?
Or vice versa, yeah. So, I mean, and I guess I've kind of always tried to challenge myself keeping the balance, which is not easy. I can definitely, you know, with the work that it's taken to where I've got with my business, I can definitely appreciate why things fall apart for people. It's
something's got to give.
It takes a lot of work, and you are kind of constantly like juggling your time to kind of work with both. And I guess again, it's, you know, for people, I think we mentioned just before we went on, we were just talking a bit about success and stuff like that. And I guess that is like my measure of success is having both those things kind of come up at the same time. And if that means that one moderates the other, that it's not going to be as successful because you are still trying to uphold this other thing, then for me, that's fine. And I think that, you know, when you're coming up, you know, and it's always been the same. It's the same for my generation. It's the same now for your generation in terms of the picture that's painted towards you. And it's always a little bit of a bear bug that I've had with society. You know, like, so for us, it was like MTV rap videos. I mean, I gravitated towards hip hop. I love like the grind and that kind of hustle and, you know, like putting in work. And I feel like hip hop speaks to that. And so, you know, but you know, when you're growing up with that and what's presented to you and all the bling and the flashiness and stuff like that, it's like, it's very easy as a young person to kind of be drawn towards that and think that is what a successful life is, you know? And so, and now it's like Instagram and that kind of thing. And I know it's like the algorithm, but it's like, it's not hard to like put two and two together that young people, like young men especially, will like look at this stuff and then all of a sudden the algorithm is playing to that. And then that's all that they see. So that's what they think that a successful life is. And I don't really have an issue if that's what you see as success and you really genuinely want that. Like, that's great and more power to you, but I just worked out through time and through circumstance that wasn't really what I wanted.
Fulfilling you.
Not
right?
completely. Like, I'm not going to lie, in my young 20s, it looks super appealing,
yeah.
but it's just not practical,
Yeah.
I guess. And I guess there's an element of practicality to it. And
For
the
sure.
practicality is the happiness has a bearing on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that drive, that desire to be successful, you sort of have to transfer that drive into a vehicle. And the vehicle you chose was the hospitality space, the industry. And 25 years into the game, into the industry, sorry, and 10 years of those have been doing your own thing. And so when you started, was that always the goal? Was that always the dream to have your own cafe one day?
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're coming out of school and falling into hospitality, realizing very early on that was something that I wanted. Like, I didn't know it was going to be a cafe, a bar, a restaurant, or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I knew very early on that that's what I wanted. And so from that point on, it was kind of, I knew that I had to do everything I could to gain as much experience and knowledge and money, like capital is a huge, huge barrier. I think it's come down a little bit now. But again, that's knowledge to know what things work and what hospitality suppliers will provide you things and things like that,
Wow.
So, but, so it's knowledge and capital, the biggest, or even time, I guess, are the biggest barriers. And so I just knew that I had to like really put in work to kind of understand that.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, I'd really worked like 6-7 days a week, yeah, anybody that knows me knows how much I've worked over that time to kind of make it happen. And then I think as I kind of worked that hard and voiced that that's what I wanted, it kind of turned people a little bit to like support me. Like,
Absolutely.
I think with my mum really trying to like keep me on the straight and narrow, like, I think I earned her respect with that work ethic and putting in that work so she could kind of see, he's serious about this, this is what he wants. Yeah. And so like for her, she really helped me in the respect that she saw an opportunity for me to invest in some property. As most people know, it's a opportunity to leverage yourself, and unfortunately, I think things have changed a little bit. I guess for my generation, it was, quite inaccessible, but still a bit accessible.
Yeah.
Whereas now that kind of goalpost has moved a little bit further.
Oh my God.
And yeah, so she saw an opportunity for me to invest, and that's kind of what helped leverage me into this place. But that's not to take away from the fact that at that point I had an unplanned child, and so this was like a roof over our head. It wasn't just like an investment. Yeah, it was kind of playing a role in terms of providing things for my family. So there was a big decision to be made at that time of like selling that to, basically move on to the next stage and risk that security, so to speak. But I guess the kind of commitment that she was willing to make, born off the back of my work ethic, and then there were other people that I worked for that, like showed me things with like lease agreements and all sorts of other stuff that like is not typical to be seen or shown when you're coming up in a place or in the industry. So there were just people that would lean into that. And again, it was born off the back of like work ethic, of them seeing like my drive and just the fact that I was willing to work hard for them. It was kind of like it was a reciprocal kind of thing. It was like, I'm working hard for you. I'm voicing that I want to do this thing. And they're like, hey, we're going to reward you with some knowledge.
This knowledge, absolutely.
And
Very
so,
relatable.
I know that people, complain a bit about like the wage in hospitality. And believe me, it wasn't exactly special when I was coming up. There was one point I was managing a restaurant on $12 an hour.
Wow.
So, I know things are kind of relative, but $12 an hour back then was still pretty poor. But the fact that I was being rewarded with information and time from the people that I was working with, I saw as a benefit, so I was willing to kind of take that on the chin to learn more.
The 25 years in the industry, with 15 of those years sort of learning off these people, learning the trade, all that sort of stuff, and then 10 years, 10 plus years committing to building your own thing. Would you say that you've learned more in the 15 years of working for someone else, learning off someone else, or would you say in the 10 years of doing your own thing?
That's a difficult question. It's a very good question.
Thank you.
I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
I think equal parts,
Yeah.
but just as fundamental, pivotal.
Yeah.
The last like 10 years has been a trip. Like growing the business and then the pandemic, cost of living crisis and stuff like that, like huge learnings.
Mm.
But then also at the same token, like working for people coming into my own place, when the global financial crisis hit, I was working age.
Mm.
So there's a lot of lessons that I had then that definitely helped, especially for my mind space, for like this latest set of challenges. I kind of had some muscle memory a little bit. So yeah, just as valuable, I think that's like a lot of people come to me, and ask me for advice, especially around hospitality and business and things like that. Young people coming up. And the biggest thing that I say is patience, like I think it's very easy. I mean, even now it's like, it's quite accessible to start your own business. It's very easy to start drop shipping, start a website.
Yeah.
You could do that tomorrow. You could be 18, 19, 20, and I think if you did that, there'd be a lot of learnings in that. But at the same time, I think there's a lot to be said for like putting in the work, gaining that knowledge of other people, So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to know, like everyone's journeys are different, but I just think that, especially for me being such a practical learner, that day in, day out learnings was super valuable.
Yeah.
Also, like, every customer interaction that I had, every interaction with staff, when I think back on it, every single one is like a data point, that like I've drawn from experience, So there are things that happen in my cafe now where like I'm serving someone and it will be, you're taking a certain read off someone, and the way that the energy that they're bringing in terms of the interaction. And it's like, for me, I have muscle memory of like hundreds of interactions that are similar or that, if not the same.
Yeah.
And like it allows you to cope with things. Sometimes it's like a negative interaction and like how to take that.
For sure.
And sometimes, sometimes it's a yes sir, 2 bags full, sir. And that's like an appropriate kind of energy for what's going on.
Yeah.
And other times it's like no, I'm going to draw the line here and this is not acceptable in my place. Please do not come back. And it's like the confidence to make those decisions is born off the back of all of those data points.
You've done the reps.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's a hard thing to quantify. Like, the experience of the last 10 years has been invaluable. Like, and I'm like super grateful to have like kind of navigated all these things, both even in terms of like older stage stuff, like, so, I've got to an age where my mum has passed away. That same, like there was a 6-month block there where it was my mum. I had a friend take his own life. I had another really formative friend die in really tragic circumstances. So I had like this series of things. This was like basically just before I opened the second cafe, into opening the second cafe.
Yeah, wow.
And that was like hugely life defining and life changing, like in terms of like mental space, like approach and everything. But that's like, being exposed to that in this 10 years of work, like that's a very big experience.
Yeah.
And so how do you like weigh that against your previous 10 years? I don't know,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was going to go there a little bit later, but we might as well go there now. Those are the challenges that you've had to deal with, including COVID is another one. The cost of living crisis. It's
been just one thing after another to a degree. Yeah.
But one of the things that spoke to me was the idea of resilience that you've mentioned. And although you've underwent all these challenges and difficulties, all they did was fuel resilience. And what kept you moving was the love for what you do. And so when you look at challenges now, like how do you view challenges now after experiencing all those sorts of things?
As opportunities for growth,
Mm,
essentially.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and they are like, I think it's one thing to have a challenge happen to you and kind of like stick your head in the sand or like run away from it kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, how do I navigate this? And if I do navigate it, like the if I come out the other side of it, or either side of it, I've
Mm,
probably learned some really valuable things here,
yeah.
and it's like in preparation for the next stage. And so like I look at it and you touched on it, you said that the love of what I do is what kind of got me through. And it is, but it's on both accounts. It's the love that I have for like business and testing my business acumen. So
Yeah.
like it's always been like a really big thing of like trying to grow and better be a better business person.
Mm,
And then it's also I love being a dad. I love being a family man. So like trying to keep those things, working, both working.
yeah.
That's kind of what has helped me get through. And they kind of go hand in hand.
Mm,
Obviously, like I have to have the business running like successfully to some kind of point to feed my family.
yeah.
Like that's if you strip it down, that's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
basic
Yeah.
kind of.
I sort of look at them now like challenge, you can use pain, obstacles, all these sorts of words. They're kind of inevitable, right? They're kind of gonna come one way or
They
another,
are
aren't
going to
they?
come, and that's the other thing. It's like, it's trying to be like grateful in the moment
Mm,
because life can change at an instant. So
absolutely.
like, it can all be like great now,
Mm,
but tomorrow I might get some really shitty news about someone I love,
for sure.
so it's like you just have to be, not let alone something about yourself,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so you just, yeah, it's just trying to keep that perspective that, and so whilst the challenge is hard, it's like, well, like, do I have my health,
Mm,
or is that going to be a challenge at some
yeah.
point? Probably is. The challenges are always going to come,
Mm.
but I think it's the approach and kind of how you accept that challenge.
Well, speaking of the dream and old Greg's dream of opening his own cafe, 2014, February 22nd, 2014.
Yeah.
Do your research
Nice.
team.
Yeah.
So almost 11 years,
Yeah.
you opened Goodness Gracious. And with all the challenges that have come in that almost 11-year space, you've pretty much been living that old Greg's dream. What's Greg's dream now?
Just to keep trying to push on with it, I guess. Yeah.
Mm,
You know, we spoke a little bit before about like that initial step and kind of being accepting of like failure, so to
mm,
speak, and like it not working out.
yeah,
I guess for me, like on paper, it's like you're selling the family home to finance your first place. If it doesn't work out, like that's it could set you back a little bit,
yeah.
but it's like being like content and all right with that decision.
Mm,
And so this thing, like uh, I've never held my self worth in the place, which I think makes it easier. Like, and don't get me wrong, like I love it and I
yeah.
love serving people and I love the opportunity that it brings for like the staff that I've had, up and coming, and that ability to try and mentor them, and
Mm,
especially if they see some value in what you're doing and the advice that you're trying to give, like that's really satisfying.
mm,
But uh, at the same time, if it all fell over, it's not, my self-worth's not in it. Like I've said to you before, I'm like happy just to kind of disappear into the background
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and do whatever. And so, the thing for me is that if there's an opportunity, a next stage to be able to try and grow the brand and like extend on my acumen,
Mm,
then that's cool, and like that ticks a lot of boxes.
yeah.
And so I'll always be forever trying to do that. But at the same time, it's like if I misstep and it all capitulates, then it just is what it is. Like,
Yeah.
So my acumen only got so far,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, so I'm just, the whole thing has been very organic. And I think it's like, there's a lot of awareness, there's a lot of like self auditing and like working out like who you are as a person and what you want and
Mm.
where your kind of comfort levels are at. Um, but there's a lot of like business decisions that have been made, like I guess in terms of the growth from the first to the second, that was off the back of a lot of disruption around Eden Terrace potentially with the city rail loop. So,
Yeah.
you've seen what's happened in the central city with city rail loop work and and I guess the destruction of like people's businesses and stuff that has
Mm.
caused.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, I was acutely aware that that could be myself on our front doorstep.
Mm.
There was supposed to be another train station across from us that the council canned. I didn't that decision to can that came about. I was already open and operating with Eden Terrace, but I was very happy that it was canned.
Mm.
But I didn't know, and so we had all these really great signs, queues out the door. The place was like pumping, and so it gave me confidence to be like, okay, well, I should probably look for another area
Yeah.
to do another one to try and kind of minimize the risk or like
Mm.
spread the risk, which kind of seems counterintuitive,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know. But I was like, well, if I have another one and it's like going all right, and this other one suffers, maybe that'll like hold it up for that, however long I've
That
got to see
period.
through that period. Yeah.
Mm.
And then, and then that kind of thesis went into the next one, where I had the landlord came and they were developing this project and they're like, do you want to be part of this? And that was the Goodside Food Precinct at Takapuna.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, like, again, I guess it's like work ethic.
Mm.
People can see the work that you're putting in and how that's kind of working out. And so that attracts things, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that happened with Parnell as well. They saw the success of the first one, but I was also actively looking to do another one because of that risk that I saw.
Yeah.
And so, and again, like those decisions, I guess there's an element of luck to it. You can call it acumen, you can call it luck, but come COVID and come the cost of living crisis, like that, having the multiple outlets has actually helped see us through, because
Mm.
sometimes one is underperforming and one
Yeah.
is overperforming, and it
Mm.
kind of like all balances out. So it's been fortunate in that respect,
Yeah.
but not without hard work to make that work.
Wow.
And there are times that the one that's underperforming, you're like, oh shit,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I do question though with the hard work, with the continuous chasing and all those sorts of things, always thinking about the next thing. Expansion's another word I'm getting. Have you ever felt like the need or wanted like, because you're always going, you're always going. Have you ever felt like, man, I think I want a little bit more just peace or anything
Um,
like that? Has
I've
that ever crossed your mind?
No, that really happened at the point when I was going from one to two, and those kind of like personal tragedies were playing out. So that and again, serendipity with my eldest like falling into surfing and stuff like that. So when I was like wagging school and things like that, a lot of that was like a misspent youth going bodyboarding out in O'Neill's Beach,
Yeah,
next
wow.
to Bethel's,
Bethel's.
yeah, and a little bit of Piha and stuff like that. So,
Beautiful.
and that was a sport that I was really into, just being out in nature and in the surf and something like that. And I, really with work and life, I'd had probably 15 years out of the water. I'd never even kind of considered that would be a part of my life.
Yeah, wow.
And it was only my eldest, who was 9 at the time, kind of falling back into surfing. And this was like probably just after all those personal tragedies. So it was just really like serendipitous that she took to it. She's not big on like a lot of sport. She had tried a few things that just didn't stick. And, you know, myself and my wife, Kat, we were always kind of big on like, they need one thing, minimum, we've had it in our lives kind of thing. And yeah, and so she fell into surfing, had a love for it, and we just saw an opportunity to foster that. to give her some kind of personal growth and some disconnection from society and stuff like that, as she's, through her life. And I just knew that I needed to be out in the water with her if she was really going to take it. We were like, okay, you're gonna have to learn how to PR if you're going to do it, because if you can surf PR, you can probably surf most places. And I had to draw on my experience of younger Greg to be out there with her, and and that's been really good, because I guess ever since then, like, I've kind of, and I guess it's part of the position where I've grown the business, but I've been able to manufacture my time a bit around the surf and the swells and what's going on. And so whilst there's all this work stuff and these challenges and the growth that I've kind of been doing or looking for, I've had like good time, like just mental break from the world.
Yeah. Still finding those moments.
Yeah, still finding those moments. So that's been really like super, super, super healthy. It's made this other stuff like easier in some respects. I don't know what it would be like if I wasn't doing that,
Yeah, wow.
So, I mean, through my life, like, I've always played a lot of football, like soccer. A big part of that has been in my 20s, playing with a group of friends. We've played a lot of futsal and stuff like that. So that was kind of happening once a week through the initial starting of the business and growth then. So I was kind of getting that break. But as the body's getting older and stuff like that, I mean, we're still playing, but it's much harder.
Yeah.
And so the boogie boarding has been, non-impactful. It still takes a bit of guts, no guts, no glory kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But it's an easier thing that I can see, being a continuous in my life for some time. And so it's, anybody now of kind of relative age that's asking about business, my kind of reply is, you need that one thing.
That's the biggest takeaway from there.
I mean, you're into your boxing.
Absolutely.
And for me, it's like, it can be any sport or anything. Like, it's just what can take you away, and a lot of it, I think, is like something where you're like actively have put that phone down and you're getting like an hour break from it. And that's what I mean by disconnected from society. It's like, teenage, pre-teen and now teenage girls coming up in that environment. It's like, they really need that ability to not have that phone. And so that's where I'm like super happy with Charlie, my eldest, her drive for surfing, and then my youngest with her dance. It's that just gives them that ability to be away, and I guess with like my mental health and well-being as I've gone through my work journey, like, I've just seen the importance of that. It's been reinforced.
But I want to talk a little bit more about Goodness Gracious. And because they do say that your business is a reflection of you. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, in terms of getting it to open, it was like a manifestation or culmination of 15 years worth of experience in the industry, so that's my experience. That's plenty of things that I've looked to that have influenced my decisions and even menu, aesthetic, all of that stuff. And then like I've kind of taken the parts that I've liked and put it into my place. I've like filtered all that stuff to produce my thing. And I would say even more to this day now, everyone knows, well, most people know about like the importance of authenticity, and so there are probably even more elements of the place, from content, marketing to the style of service, all of that is even more authentic, because there's a bigger component of the public wanting to see that, wanting to understand that. And it's great. I think like, the relationships that I've built off the back of that, so I think on all levels, the brand has probably grown even more into what is me. I used to kind of think, you do this thing and kind of want to stay in the background, and that was always kind of the style of hospitality
Mm.
when I was coming up. Like you could see like public level, they always kind of wanted to know who the owner was and stuff like that. But the owners generally kind of like some of them would work on the floor, but they wouldn't engage too much about the stuff beyond the service.
Yeah,
I think
wow.
that's just like where the culture's kind of gone.
Yeah.
But I like it. I think it's good for the business. I think
Mm.
it's good for everyone. I think it forms stronger relationships and stronger community.
Yeah.
Things
Well,
like this have come about off the
yeah,
back of that.
absolutely.
You know, so I definitely don't begrudge it.
Mm. What sort of made you flick that switch and think, oh, I'm going to be more involved and more, even with your content and posting things that, that actually your learnings and,
Yeah, I
you're
think
sharing and
it's
those
kind of
sorts of
been an
things.
evolution. Like it's always like kind of keeping an eye on what's going on in culture and
Mm.
what's going on in like industry and stuff like that. And like obviously social media has had a big bearing on on where the world is at, right?
Yeah.
And this kind of stuff. So, I'd done a little bit of it. I mean, my Instagram was like private, so to speak, for the first half of Goodness Gracious, right? And then we had a social media blow up, and that was probably like a big catalyst for it. We had like a up and coming influencer who had like 12,000 followers at the time, food influencer. Most people would know him probably, at least in Auckland. You know, at the time, and he was writing some pretty harsh takes
Oh, wow.
on places. I get it. Like it was like, if I remove myself from the business and I put myself in public's perspective, like it was like entertaining,
Yeah.
So like, I get it. But I just knew being in the industry on my side, I was kind of like, oh man, if this like comes through, it's probably not going to be good,
Not gonna be good.
like I just had a feeling that, it was, yeah, like, I think, whenever and you would know this in the position that you're in doing this is like, and it's even more prominent now. There's a lot. I mean, I've drawn so many lessons from it. Like it's a blessing and a curse, and every time you put your head up, you put yourself out there,
Oh my God.
you're gonna get some hate,
Yeah.
And I think you just have to accept that. And a part of me is like, that's fine, because like it shouldn't be easy.
Mm.
So like you do have to like earn it,
Yeah.
and so a part of me is like, again, it's like these contradictory kind of like ideas, because
Yeah.
like a part of me is definitely like, you have to earn it. Things shouldn't be easy,
Absolutely.
so like this is part and parcel with doing anything,
Yeah.
right? And so, but some of it you could say is tall poppy or what have you, but I just feel like anytime you kind of put your head up to do something, growing a business, growing a brand, whatever, being an influencer, putting yourself out there, making content, you're going to get some kind of hate, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it, when you kind of delve into it, a lot of the people that are like writing commentary, like, they're just going through their own shit.
Negative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Negative.
And it's like, I kind of feel like I've had this kind of entertaining series, because, every post I do now, I'll at least have one comment,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like I'll engage some of them,
Mm.
and I try to do it like in a nice kind of way to bring the conversation further along.
For sure.
And I find actually most people you engage, like all of a sudden they've taken their comment down,
Yeah.
but some will keep it up there. And I think for authenticity's sake, I'll keep it up there.
Yeah.
I don't block them. I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
leave
yeah.
the conversation there for other people to see. I think it's a great way for public looking at your thing to see what type of person you are and how you handle this
Can
type
deal
of
with
stuff.
those sorts of things.
Yeah. And
right?
so, and again, these are all learnings from this incident that took place. So
Mm.
he came through our Parnell spot and like just like wrote a piece that had like so much vitriol, and it was pretty bad, like from my perspective, like,
Mm.
and the take that I took was that, there's a lot of love and a lot of things that have gone into this business to provide this thing for people. And that's for the team that are working on the day or what have you.
Mm.
And it's very like discouraging and disparaging for them to see something like that. And at the time, and it's still very relevant, even more so, I think, across industries, because of the hard times that we've been through. But, I guess pre-COVID, you can like consider it kind of like fluffy times, right?
Yeah.
It's very easy to say that now that we've been through COVID and the cost of living. You're like, man, actually those times weren't that bad, I think, And so, like you just had this thing come through and like your team are reading this and there's a lot of thing about mental health and hospitality and stuff like that. And I was acutely aware of it. You had Anthony Bourdain, like, take his own life, so there was a lot of like high profile kind of hospitality stuff going on at the time. And so I was acutely aware of it. That happened. And so I took this kind of challenging take, but it was all kind of calculated. So it was like, it was that part of it. I wanted to stand up for my team, stand up for my brand, and I think you kind of have to. And I think that's bringing your authenticity to it. And this is probably the catalyst of where I started to bring more of that to it and where the brand really started to, I guess, be more of me. And it was kind of just putting a line in the sand and saying like, I don't really accept this behavior. I get it. From Joe Public and an entertainment side, like it's fine. But, also from a business side, I just don't think this is really that nice. And I think, if it was like a very genuine complaint that I think, and this goes for anyone that's dining out, I just think the opportunity should be afforded to the establishment to rectify that problem if it's a proper, genuine issue. And then if the establishment fails to rectify the situation and like in a reasonable and caring kind of way, then by all means, like slaughter them. Go Google, go, do your personal Instagram or whatever. But like I think in the first instance, the opportunity should be afforded to the establishment. And I think that speaks to any business that makes a mistake and working out what the ethos is of that business and whether they really care about the community and their patrons or the money, right? And I think if you care about the community and the patrons first, then the money will follow.
Oh my God. Well, speaking of community, you owe a lot of your success and the success of Goodness Gracious to the community that you've built. To anyone out there who is wanting to build a community, a long-lasting community, close to 11 years, what would you say to us? What would be some piece of advice for us wanting to build a community? Some things to think about.
Oh, it's just showing the care factor through your brand, and through who you are as a person and your interactions with people, and I think the beauty about like social media and stuff like that is you can amplify that. So it's the one-on-one conversations that you have with people on the daily. And then, I guess social media, if you can take those interactions in principle and kind of, convey that to a wider audience, then you're liable to kind of grow that community faster. But it's just groundwork, it starts one-on-one, and I think that's something that I've tried to be very conscious of in terms of the way that I serve people and meet people through the cafe. And I think that's, I guess hospitality is advantageous in that respect as it's such a touch point. So you have that ability to meet people and build those relationships, but it's being aware of those. So it's like you get a customer first time, 2 times, 3 times, and they're becoming somewhat of a regular. It's like, take the time to like make a conversation with them, introduce them, exactly. See what's going on in their day, I mean, there are things in hospitality that I think are very transportable across any business interactions, and that's like that is remembering things about people, and I think that shows that you've taken like a genuine interest. So hospitality, obviously, there's little things like just remembering their coffee and things like that. Like people very much appreciate that. But if they were talking about last week, they were on their way to a job interview. Next time they come in, how the job interview.
All the boxes out there with short-term memory loss. We struggle with that.
Again, I'm a practical learner, so maybe I find that a little bit easier. And maybe practical learners do. It's that repetition kind of thing. But that's the kind of stuff that I would say about building a community. But I think it's just being curious and trying things yourself. Like I'm still learning,
Yeah.
like if I was a master, I'd probably have like 500,000 followers on some kind of platform or what have you, but like I don't, So like I'm still learning and, and I think it's just being aware of stuff like that and being aware of like where culture and society is at, to make those connections with people.
Yeah.
Paying attention to what's going on.
Mm.
Yeah, showing that you can care where you can. Big thing for us was when like COVID was happening, we closed early.
Yeah, bro.
We could see what was happening, and we just made the decision for our community, like to put our community over money. Like it's not like I wasn't worried about what would happen to the business or my family. Like at that point, there was no government support. Like everyone's muddling their way through what's going on.
Yeah.
But it was to the point that it was like, well, our borders are still open. This thing seems to be in many countries. I don't really know to the degree of how bad this is or not.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, chances are like Auckland's such a port, like with so many transient people coming through, it's probably in our country.
Yeah,
That's the kind of theory. So it's like, let's just close. Like, why are we putting people at risk? What, for some money?
Yeah.
Like chances are if this bed's in, we're going to be closed for a while anyway. This doesn't, so it's just like, and a lot of people like, I guess kind of paid attention at that point. Like, oh, look at what this place is doing.
Yeah.
I mean, like we were at Goodside Food Precinct and our place was basically closed while the other operators are still going, and that's not to begrudge like other operators and what they did for that. I mean, they, I feel like everyone in that situation is making decisions on the fly and trying to do what they think is best for them and their families and things like that. So they're not easy decisions. But that was our take. And I think that just showed to our community that we cared about them. And that they were at the forefront of our mind, and they always have been. As much as you're trying to make a successful business, you want people to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I guess that like begrudges me about that social media instance is that like at the end of the day, like I've made something that I want people to enjoy. So it's like if I have missed the mark, like come and talk to us about it so we can rectify it and let us improve. Like if it was genuine, you'd be getting a refund. Like, and I'd probably be giving you a voucher to be like, come through and hopefully we meet the mark. I just want you to have a good time in my place. I want it to fulfill a need, so that's kind of, I guess that's the thing that I think that's probably what's also helped build the community is that my thought process with the business has always just been about like, outside of testing my own business acumen, it's like about trying to fulfill a need for people, like bring some value to them in some way. And that's kind of what I've strived for above everything.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't know. I think that also like means that you're just trying to execute on things 100% all the time. You're not always going to do it, but you're always aiming there.
Yeah, brother.
And then, that builds people's trust and value in you.
For sure.
Yeah.
That is actually one of my personal goals going forward is to every interaction that I have with someone is to try and provide or bring as much value to the conversation that I can, even if it's with a stranger.
Yeah. So that's my advice for kind of community building.
There'll be people tuning in that are at the beginning stages of their journey, whether it be entrepreneurship or another career. But I feel like even before, please correct me if you think I'm wrong as well, before you've actually started the business plan, so to speak, I think it's a feeling before anything. I have this itch to start this thing. And so you've mentioned, I just want to ask about this is not even a question I've written down, but just after hearing a lot of your story, some of the nitty gritty things that you mentioned, selling the house in order to buy the first location, like things that we don't actually think about, when taking that leap, taking that risk because we have that feeling of starting something.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, what are some of the nitty gritty things for us to think about, particularly the entrepreneurs that have that feeling, that are wanting to start something, but, and we're going to learn as we go.
Yeah.
Like, for example, with the show, I was mentioning it right at the start that I wanted to share with you, but now we're starting to think about. I had a conversation yesterday with a potential investor, but and he was asking me questions such as, are you company registered?
Yeah.
Have you got a board?
Yeah.
Or, all these things. And I'm like, man, I just love sitting down and having a chat, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But now he's starting to really, really question me about, no, you really need to start looking at this thing from a business perspective, treating it like that.
Yeah.
And so I know there would be a lot of other people out there that are in a similar position, or maybe even the earlier stages where they're like, oh, I want to start this cafe. I want to start this e-com business. So what would you say to us?
Well, it's the practicalities of it, in the sense that like you have to approach it like with business fundamentals in mind. I think especially in hospitality, it's like a huge misstep that people do because, the majority of people think that they can do a cafe or a restaurant or a bar and probably, if they had money to do it, they probably could. But whether they do it with like the business fundamentals in mind or not is a huge difference. So it's even the nitty gritty of starting out. It's like, have you trademarked your name?
Yeah.
Are you company registered?
Yeah.
Like these little things. Trademark's a big one.
Yeah, bro.
People don't do it, and then something will come back to bite them. I mean, there's been plenty of examples of like a, Disney company or whatever coming to little old New Zealand with the bakery down in Te Awamutu, or something like that they've been taken to task because they have a similar name.
Wow.
And it's like, it's all those things that people don't think. It's almost like looking to like, what is a big goal with your business? Like say for mine, it was like when I opened, so I said the growth to the second was about mitigating risk, and it was. But with the first cafe, I always provisioned for growth.
Yeah.
So like I was very conscious of having our own branded coffee, things like that, because I was provisioning for growth. I didn't know if it was going to happen, but it's like you want those things in place. And I guess the way to do that is having like some kind of bigger goal, like a 5 or 10 year kind of mark. What could my business or show potentially look at that point, and then reverse engineering from that point and going, what are the things that would need to be in place for that to be a thing?
Yeah.
You might not ever get to that thing, but I want to give myself every best chance of being there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like, and then I think that becomes easier. It starts to all unfold. It's like, okay, well, if I'm 10 years deep with multiple outlets, surely I want my name trademarked.
Yeah.
Because I don't want someone else coming along at that point and taking it, things like that. And then, surrounding yourself with like a good legal representative, like a good solicitor, good accounting. And those are conversations with people like, who do you use? What are they like? And then just going and meeting those people, a lot of things where it's like an initial consultation, they don't charge. Because it's just a meeting to be like, who am I talking to here?
Yeah,
what's their experience? Does that relate to does my accountant even do other shows?
Yeah. Alignment, right?
Yeah. Alignment. Yeah. And so those are some big things. I mean, it's the practicalities of it.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. Like we mentioned from the start, even off camera, just one step at a time, learning as we go. These things just happen, and now it's like more work to do. And then the next thing will pop up, and then, that investor may come on board, and then you're right. Okay, now let's go to the legal side of things.
Yeah.
More learning to do, more work to do. And then, other things will pop up, and it's continuously.
Yeah, it's just a lot of work. And sometimes you go down paths that don't work out. But the knowledge gained and going down there, like you have to be, you have to be curious. You have to kind of be willing to explore what the different avenues are. And it's just equipping yourself with information so you can make, I just call them educated guesses.
Yeah.
Because they are kind of guesses. Like any outcome, you don't know what the result will be. But it needs to be an educated guess, like
learning's either way.
Yeah, learning's either way. Yeah. And again, I feel like if things don't work out, you know, sometimes you don't see the value in that for like years down the track,
Yeah.
but your mind clicks to be like, oh, that's like, you know, one of
Retrospective.
my favorite kind of sayings or ideas is from Steve Jobs, you know, and he had this thing about looking back and connecting the dots. I think that's like hugely important, you know. So when you start with someone's background and you ask like what their family upbringing was like and the things that it formed, you know, like with business, you know, when I look back like at like high school, like I met like a old high school friend like last year. He lives in Australia, and he was like, I'd kind of forgotten about them. He reminded me like of these massive parties that we threw, like ticketed parties,
Yeah.
like kind of like playing in the grey area.
Yeah.
Like there was a mid city complex in Queen Street that had like closed down.
Wow.
You know, and we held some like massive parties there. You know, like getting one of the gangs to do like bodyguard, you know, bouncing, selling tickets, like these, and then from that we like did like King's College graduation parties and stuff like that. You know, like, and it was like, man, like to a degree, I've always had my hand in like some kind of business or hospitality. You know, yeah. So it's kind of like, you know, you look back on things that happen in your life, and you're like, I can see why that happened or how that's like informed decisions now.
Yeah, brother.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
One of the last biggest learning I want to touch on of your career that you've mentioned is the idea of service. And you've said service is not just a task, it's an art form. And I love that, bro, because service is something for me personally that I'm really wanting to improve on. And so what are your thoughts on service after everything that you've learned over your 25 years?
Yeah, it's just that element of bringing value, you know, like if I equate it to hospitality, you know, I have to accept that the people coming in, good day, bad day, you know, this is like 5 minutes that they're getting, you know, and so that can be escapism. It could be their boss berating them and they've just come to get out, you know, like it could be someone on their way to a job interview, nervous as heck, you know, so you're trying to like bring value. That value they might not even want a conversation. It just could be a coffee.
Yeah, bro.
That's all they want from you. You know, other times it could literally be like, I'm working from home. I don't see anybody. This is my social interaction. This is my opportunity to meet someone. You know, so it's like being acutely aware of all these kind of things and being able to meet that person with some kind of value. Like that to me is like service, but not with the expectation of something in return. Like I know this is a business and there's something transactional there, but I can just take the transaction of your coffee.
Yeah.
But do I want to offer you some conversation if that's what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I do. It doesn't cost anything. You know, so it's like, but, you know, that's always measured because you've got to accept 100 different people, 100 different reasons, you know, and so I think the art of service is like being able to kind of take that read, you know, and again, like I've got a lot of experience with a lot of data points to kind of draw on, you know, but, you know, I'm constantly trying to like, I guess, mentor my staff through those as well, because, you know, some people I've had, let alone my daughter who's 15, you know, she started working some part-time at 13. I've had another girl work for me. She started, I think, when she was 14, you know, so it's not like there's a huge wealth of life experience there, you know, or a huge lot of data points for them to draw on from like a mixed kind of age group, ethnicities, everything, you know. So it's like you're as much as like, I understand that, you know, I'm 43. I've got salt and pepper here for something, you know, like, I got a wealth of experience to draw from. And so it's like trying to mentor people through those as well. So yeah, ultimately, I mean, I guess the art of service is being able to meet people with that value and like identifying what that need is and then meeting that mark, you know? Yeah. So you don't get it right all the time, but I think with the experience, you probably get it more right more often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time in the game.
Yeah.
I love that, brother. Well, service, work on for Zach. majority of our audience is younger men.
Mm.
What do you think we need to work on as men?
If you were just trying to address one thing, it would be to have some patience, put in some work, work on yourself.
Mm.
I think like personal growth is a huge, huge thing. I think people in this generation are lucky that they have more awareness of that than maybe what we had when we were younger. I had a lot of things by default, I guess, with like upbringing, so like understanding culture and society and how to act within that,
Mm.
like how to act accordingly and appropriately.
Yeah.
Some people have things like that are advantageous, like so. Obviously I look the way that I look, but my nana was Chinese Fijian.
Mm.
I'm Ngāi Tahu. My
Wow.
whakapapa goes to Patahi,
Mm.
and so there's these elements of things that I've been exposed to, and I guess that have given me an understanding about what's appropriate to how to be,
Mm.
within culture and within society. Not everyone has that advantage, but I
Mm.
think the opportunity to learn is there, and that's where again I just think this generation with the amount of information that's available, like if you want to learn or you want exposure, you can get it. Whereas I think for our generation, a lot of it is kind of by default, little
Yeah.
bit of luck, little bit of happenstance.
Wow. For the lads out there, to all actually, wahine and male. For you personally, bro, what do you think that you need to work on?
Oh, it's still just that like constant balance of being uh, the the best dad that I can be,
Mm.
whilst being like the best kind of mentor and business owner that I can be.
Mm.
Like I think again, it's like anything like with that service, everything you're aiming for here, you're kind of trying to build this ideal of what you want to be, and you're like reverse engineering that to be like, what do I need to do to get to that point?
Mm.
And it may not work out there, but I've got to like provision to give myself the best opportunity. I think that takes constant work.
Absolutely.
I think there's things that are around the corner that you don't know,
Yeah.
and that they'll present themselves, and you'll have to like work out how to get through that.
Mm.
So I know there are some things. It's not something that I've given a lot of thought to currently. It's definitely there are times when I've been like, shit, this is an obvious fault
Mm.
that I need to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think, and a lot of that for me, I think is losing sight of ideals, being clouded by shit that's going on that is just, it just, if I then use my family as a North Star, that'll put me back in the right mindset that I
Mm.
need to be,
Mm. Beautiful.
so it's just, yeah, it's a balance, man. Like life is a balance, and there are always going to be things that come your way, and you just have to be prepared to like work through those things. And
Mm.
a lot of that is work on yourself. you know I think if you have like five people that are kind of turning around and constantly saying there's this thing about you that you're doing,
Mm.
then you have to kind of pay attention to that and be like, that's what I'm doing, for
Maybe.
better or worse.
Wow.
I have to accept this feedback
Mm.
and be like, I've got to do this.
Yeah.
I think like that kind of approach as a business owner, if I've got five staff turning around going, hey man, the way that you kind of talk to us about this or show us this, it's like, okay, I've got to change that.
Yeah.
Or that maybe they're saying it in a positive way, and it's
Mm.
kind of like, okay, cool, like that's good. I've got to maintain that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like it's being open to criticism, so like, the social media thing, the way that I met that head on, like traditional kind of marketing and stuff like that, they would say, oh, an owner should have never responded in that manner.
Mm.
I think the sum of all parts where I am with the business now probably says, hey, it probably was correct from my side, but yeah, I think that, you have to be prepared to face that criticism and kind of take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bro.
And then work on what needs to change if it needs to change, you know?
Ooh. Easier said than done, though.
Easier
eh?
said than done.
But
Yeah, like totally easier said
work
than
on for
done.
everyone.
Yeah, and it can, like, some of those exercises can be painful, you know, and they in like, you know, sometimes things aren't apparent to you and then they get brought up and it's like a realization and you're like, oh man, that sucks.
Yeah.
I'm an idiot.
Yeah, you're right. Though sometimes certain things, certain comments maybe trigger us in a different way, and you think, why? Well, why does that? Why is that affecting me? Why?
Yeah.
Why do I feel?
Yeah, why do I feel that way?
Absolutely.
And I think so, like, you know, I'm in a good spot at the moment, you know, in terms of like my well-being, my mental state, like that kind of stuff. And I think that makes it easier to handle stuff, you know, and that's where I think, like, as a young man, like working on yourself, the faster that you can get to that place, like the better equipped you will be to like handle stuff,
Absolutely.
you know, and like business, like you're putting yourself out there, you know, so you are as good as you are, you're going to be taking criticism, you know, like that's easy to see. Look at the biggest entrepreneurs in the world and you could go, oh man, they're hugely successful. I want to be like that. But look at how much criticism they take as well.
I feel like with what you're saying, the more for the young lads, for the more or the quicker that you learn about yourself, your strengths and your weaknesses, the more equipped you are going to be for those challenges, those comments that do come at you. And you
hugely.
You know, you care less, or not care less, but you can just take them on board because you know who you are.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Sounds kind of weird, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you know, it's like character building, you know, like if I think like, you know, like the social media thing, like it's such a great example because it's like at that point then, if it's like this person came in, did stuff trigger me? Why did that trigger me? You know, now I'm like, well, I'm 3 businesses deep. My Google ratings are like really good, you know, like 4.6, 4.7, and 4.8 respectively, you know, after like minimum 6 years in business is pretty good, you know, like, so I have all these like data points that go, if someone comes in and they give that kind of criticism, it's like, it doesn't marry. It doesn't marry with the data.
Yeah.
You know, so you can kind of say what you want, but I know that that's not actually the case.
Yeah.
Go back, you know, to 2018 when this happened, some personal tragedies that had thrown me off, you know, and like nervousness about growing your business. It's like, even though I'm happy with the way that I dealt with stuff, like I still feel like if that happened to me now, I'm in a way better place.
Absolutely. More equipped.
More equipped, you know? So it's like.
Internally.
Yeah, internally. Yeah. So, you know, it's a hard thing because it's like, you know, you feel like you're a 43-year-old person giving experience, you know, to younger people, and you can go, that's being gained through experience. You know, that level or that ability to be that way has been gained through experience. And here I am trying to give advice to someone that hasn't had those 10 years, you know, or 15 years. But that's where I say that, like, what I do know to be true, what's at the crux of that is having the ability to work on yourself.
Yeah, bro.
Being open to that.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I think that's where it's at for young people. It's like, you might not be at that spot to handle that kind of criticism, but if you're working on yourself, you're going to be at a way better place to be able to.
Oh, that's enough, team. Future Greg, 5-10 years. Where do you want to see yourself?
By the beach, boogie boarding. I don't know. I joke around because I'm like, I don't. If I stopped working, like, am I going to be one of those people that just like folds because I'm just so used to working? Like, I don't know. Like, you know, I'm kind of always evaluating. I guess I do it in like kind of 5-10 year blocks. So like for the next 5 years, I'd still love the opportunity to be growing the business. I kind of, you know, I want to grow the business on a twofold thing because I have staff, you know, people involved in my team that, like, if I don't grow, then these are really good people that at some point are going to hit a ceiling and they're going to want to go off and either do their own thing or work for other people because I'm only going to be able to offer so much. And so I'm going to be in this constant cycle of like hiring and training and that kind of thing. Or is it like, or do you grow and then have people grow with the business, and then some of them can train the new people, and they're also growing as people, learning more, getting exposed to more. So then that's very cool. Like, like as a business owner to be able to like offer that for people that are within your team. Like, if that's what they're striving for and you can meet that, then that's awesome. That's bringing value to them, you know? So, so as a 5-year block, I would like to be able to do that and offer that to the people that I have working with me. And then beyond that, it's like, it's a constant reevaluation, you know? It's like
Absolutely.
the world is changing so fast, you know? So it's like, you know, does the world even allow for that?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. You know?
Yeah. What's next, right?
Yeah, and I think
Mm.
that's the other thing for people is just to be acutely aware of what's going on, you know, and look at what is going on in the world, you know, from like divisiveness through to like the age of AI. Like, there's
Mm.
some very like transformative stuff that's going on, and how society is and how culture is. Like, what works in that space?
Yeah.
What doesn't? How are you going to be in that space?
Yeah, bro.
You know, like, I think these are important things that people need to be asking themselves.
Aware of.
Yeah, and
Mm.
aware of, and you know, and helping you to make informed and educated kind of decisions for yourself.
I love that. Younger Greg,
Yep.
any age you'd like, what's the one thing you want to say to him?
Just stay the course.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stay the course.
Stay the course.
Greg Corns, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for that, bro. Where can people find you? Socials.
Yeah, socials. Instagram is You Found Greg, YOUFOUNDGREG, You Found Greg. Or Goodness Gracious NZ for the cafe, but they're all kind of linked.
We do have a closing tradition, Greg, on this podcast where the previous guest leaves the next guest a question not knowing who he or she is. The question for you today, it's a bit of a different one actually. What is your favorite movie and why?
The one that is presence of mind is The Matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like super relevant. Yeah, I think there's so many parallels to like what's going on at the moment, you know, with the world and, you know, everything, all the changes. So, yeah, I don't see myself as a particular character or anything like that. It's just the movie that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a good movie. I like it. I like it.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Oh, Greg Corns team. Thank you, brother.
No worries, man. Appreciate it.
Team, if you've made it this far, please hit that subscribe button. We will give our socials _The Martin Show up here, and we'll drop Greg's socials down below as well. We will see you guys next week for another episode. That is us. Love team. Thank you.